What if we swapped Yuta and Hikari in the Culling games? We gave each of them each other's fights. How would they fare? Let's talk about it, but spoilers beware. Alright, first of all, shout out to Satoru for asking me about this today, and this is an interesting question because Yuta and Hikari are often compared to each other, right? But as you guys may know if you've been watching my videos for a while, I do think Yuta is considerably stronger than Hikari just because of all of the abilities and potential that he possesses. Yes, Hikari is virtually immortal, but at the end of the day, he's a punch and kick merchant, no disrespect. So honestly, in this scenario, I think Yuta can easily handle what Hikari had to deal with, but I don't think Hikari can deal with what Yuta had to deal with. So let's break it down. All right, let's just start with Yuta. If we put him in Hikari's place, then really the only thing we need to talk about is his fight against Kashimo, because everyone else was pretty much fodder that Hikari fought, right? So could Yuta beat Kashimo the same way Hikari did? And honestly, I think so, because this is a Kashimo that didn't use his curse technique, right? And maybe if we say he was fighting against Yuta, maybe he would have been pressed or pressured into using it, but I don't think he would have because he really wanted to save that for Sukuna, and he didn't use it against Hikari, and he lost, right? Hikari could have killed him if he wanted to. So non-mythical beast Amber Kashimo, I think Yuta can pretty easily take. But if we want to say that for whatever reason Kashimo would use mythical beast Amber, then this gets far tougher because this is a Yuta prior to swap training, so I don't know if he would have been up to snuff to deal with curse technique Kashimo. But again, in this hypothetical scenario where we're swapping them, I think we should keep the same restrictions on the fight, which means it's non-NBA Kashimo. So again, I think Yuta can handle this. Now, if we put Hikari in Yuta's place, similarly, Yuta fought mostly fodder up until, people like Druve, the Cockroach Curse, and then, of course, Uro and Ryu. So I think Uro and Ryu is where this really comes into contention. I think Hikari could probably beat everyone else prior to this moment, but when he runs into Uro is his first real problem because sky manipulation makes it very hard to engage in close quarters combat. And again, Hikari is a punch and kick merchant at the end of the day. For anyone that doesn't recall, her curse technique is sky manipulation, and she can literally grab the sky and bend it. And as you can see here, Yuta goes in for a strike, but Uro starts to move the sky at the place where his fist is going, which leads to this sequence of events where Akotsu's arm gets all wibbly wobbly and she just clocks him in the face and he completely misses her. So it is extremely difficult to hit Uro in close quarters combat. It's not impossible, I'd say. Like maybe you could get like some galaxy brain strategy with feints and stuff where you go one way and maybe the sky manipulation actually helps you hit her, but like I don't even know if that would be possible because like she's not going to misdirect the sky into herself, you know what I mean? But anyways, not to get too long-winded here, it's really hard to hit her, right? So Hikari would have a hard time actually doing anything to her. Now, would she be able to kill him? Maybe not, considering he's going to be virtually immortal in his jackpot. But we know she has a domain expansion and we don't really know what she's capable of within that. Now, would Hikari win a domain clash with her? Probably in a one-on-one scenario, but if Hikari comes into the fight jackpotted or just hits jackpot and then closes his domain, Uro could open a domain without any contest, right? So if her domain could feasibly kill him by exploding his head with, thin icebreaker or whatever the case may be, she might be able to defeat him. But again, even if she can't beat him, I don't think he can beat her. And Ryu is a whole other can of worms for Hikari, again, mostly because of the domain expansion. And the same stuff applies, right? Hikari could probably win a clash, but if he just waits until after Hikari is jackpotted, or if Hikari just enters the fight jackpotted, meaning he can't domain to clash, then if Ryu domains and gets his sure hit granite blasts on Hikari, he can probably just target that straight to Hikari's dome, and Jackpot's not going to help him with that. He will just die. Now, obviously, there are a lot of what ifs and moving parts here, and do I think it's at least feasibly possible for Hikari to defeat both of them? Yes, I think we can come up with a way where he would be able to get it done. However, there are ways that they can beat him, I think, as I've illustrated here. And in a scenario where we assume things play out like exactly the same as they did with Yuta, which doesn't really make sense, but just stick with me here, and we end up in a scenario where they have a three-way domain clash, but with Hakari instead, then that's really bad for him, right? Because all three of their domains got canceled in this scenario, and if that's Hakari, then that means he can't hit a jackpot, right? Which is far worse for him than it is for the other two. So at the end of the day, could they fill each other's shoes? It's possible, but I think Yuta has a far easier time with it than Hikari does. Then next up, Satoru asked me, what if Junpei had listened to Yuji and he had run away? And so I'm not sure if this question was inspired by my recent Junpei video or if this is just a coincidence, but in case it's a coincidence, I recently put out a video where we talked about like what if Junpei had survived and he had gone to Jujutsu High and basically got to realize his potential. So check that out because it's kind of the answer to this question, but to view this from another way, I think that honestly, even if Junpei had listened, like, and Yuji had been able to get through to him sooner, it probably wouldn't have mattered because Mahito wasn't going to just let him run away. You know what I mean? Plus, they had put a barrier up at the school. Not that that means it would have been an impassable barrier, but like, they knew what they were doing, and that whole thing was orchestrated, right, to try and evoke some sort of vow out of Yuji and Sukuna so that Sukuna could have control. So I don't think that Mahito was just going to stand by and like let Junpei out of that situation. Now, if we're saying that like maybe far earlier in the story, had Yuji been able to get through to Junpei, what might have happened? Well, I think that leads back into the other video that I was talking about earlier, where if he went to Jujutsu High and had proper mentorship, then he probably could have been a pretty strong sorcerer. And then finally today, I wanted to respond to Glitch Trap's comment here on what my interpretation of a full potential Kashimo would be, and if I think he would be able to compete with the strongest sorcerers. And Glitch says that he saw one video where someone compared him to a nuclear threat level. So the first thing I want to say is that somebody who's not like deeply ingrained in the power scaling world, I don't really have the best analysis in terms of like who is nuclear versus, you know, outerversal, multiversal, and all that type of stuff. I'm just not like well versed in that terminology. And, you know, I understand what a nuclear bomb is, but I don't necessarily know how to connect that to like specific characters' abilities, if you will. So I can't comment on if he's nuclear level, but I do think his technique is extremely powerful. But I do think we saw basically his full potential. Now, obviously, Kashimo doesn't have a domain expansion, so you might say, well, his full potential, he probably would, right? But I think that he just really can't have a domain expansion, which is not really a criticism of his skill, but more so just like that's how he was designed, right? And this is something we've talked about in videos before. And actually, I have several videos talking about different aspects of Kashimo's character. Like, we even put one out recently talking about what if he did have a domain expansion, where we come up with some fun ideas. But something I'll just often return to is that Gege designed him to be like this all or nothing guy. And because of that, I just don't think we can really push past what we actually saw from him. Like, his full potential was that time he spent in Mythical Beast Amber, and he will die afterwards because that's just how the technique works, right? So I don't really think we can give him a domain expansion because, like, how do you imbue Mythical Beast Amber as it's designed into a barrier, right? And again, I have a video where we talk about like some fun concepts, but at the end of the day, I just don't really think it's possible. So, you know, could he has simple domain? Sure, but like that just helps him a little bit in domain expansions. It doesn't really move the needle that much for him, in my opinion. So what I'll say is that I think he's already on par with the strongest sorcerers. I mean, as we saw, he, you know, went toe-to-toe with Sukuna, a weakened Sukuna, but for at least a little bit with Mythical Beast Amber. And I think aside from Gojo, Sukuna, and like an all-out Yuta Okotsu, I think Kashimo pretty much beats everyone else in the verse if he's using his technique. So I think he pretty much realized his full potential given the cards he was dealt. But y'all let me know your thoughts. Anyways, that's going to do it for this one, y'all. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.